Welcome to the Teacher Thoughts Podcast. I'm your host, Abby Hernandez. Teacher thoughts can be groundbreaking. Teacher thoughts can be tiring. And the good news is, teacher thoughts can be changed. I don't claim to be a mental health expert. I'm just an educator, and I'll be using this space to synthesize what I have learned from my self-help research in a way that will help you. Welcome to episode 2. I'm so glad you're here with me today. I'd like to start out with talking to you about a scenario. So imagine you go to school and you tell your class, "Hey kids, I'll be back in 10 minutes. You don't give them any explanation. You don't ask another teacher to check in on them. You just ghost. You just leave for 10 whole minutes. What do you think you're going to find when you come back? Did they DEAR and drop everything and read? Yeah, right. Did they do whatever was in your lesson plans? Did they find something that they had, like unfinished work, and did they work on that? No, absolutely not. You know what they did? Whatever they wanted is my guess. First thing that comes to their mind, they're doing it. And it's probably not going to be pretty. So our minds are the exact same way as your kids left unsupervised. When we leave our minds unsupervised, they will think whatever they want to. Okay? And just like what you find when you come back to your classroom, it's probably not going to be pretty. If you're anything like me, when I let my mind run free, which it's been doing for a really long time, the results aren't what I would hope for. Okay, so to summarize last week's podcast, our circumstances don't create our feelings, our thoughts do. If you didn't get to listen to it, go and check it out. I highly recommend it. So since our circumstances don't create our feelings, and we feel like we don't have control over our circumstances, that doesn't mean anything. Okay, because we do have control over our thoughts. So when we learn to start retraining our brains to think different things, or allow it to think what it naturally wants to, but then check it and redirect it, then we have so much more control and power over our results and our actions because we've taken control of our thoughts, which cause our feelings. And as Brooke Castillo says, thoughts lead to feelings. Feelings lead to actions, and actions lead to results. So if you're unhappy right now with the results in your life, professionally or personally, it all comes back to your thoughts. So as I said, the focus for today is feedback. My question for you is, as a teacher, whose feedback is the most important to you? Whose opinion about your performance and your capabilities holds the most weight, matters the most? Is it your supervisor, your teammates, your parents, or maybe if you're on the social media, your Instagram followers? Okay. After any of these people give you feedback, whether it's negative or positive, what do you make that mean about yourself? Because they have probably moved on to the next thing, especially if it is someone with a lot of responsibility, like any other teacher or administrator. They've moved on to the next thing, and they don't spend a lot of time thinking or dwelling on it. But most of us take negative feedback especially, and we dwell on it, and we add it to a file of evidence against us. Evidence that when we can pull out whenever we want to be able to convince ourselves that we're not good enough for something, or that we aren't the person that we want to be. So the feedback that they give you actually most likely doesn't even have anything to do with who you are as a person. It has more to do with their perceptions about the world, their thoughts that society has instilled in them, or maybe even there's insecurities. So especially if it's a parent like who lashes out, a lot of our digital teachers this year have gotten some pretty nasty emails from parents who are really just frustrated trying to help their kids learn from home. It's all new. And they most likely, I would imagine, feel incapable of giving their kids what they need. And they don't understand the digital platforms that the teachers are giving out their information over. That's, wow, a really academic way to say that, right? But you know what I mean. So they don't understand the learning management systems or the Zoom calls or the Microsoft Teams calls. They don't understand all of that. So when things go wrong or their kids perform poorly, they lash out. And the digital teachers, if you're a digital teacher, oh my goodness, you're working so hard. When you get that feedback, it absolutely stings, and rightfully so. So overall, when we get positive feedback, we usually get good, warm, fuzzy, great feelings. When we get negative feedback, naturally, we usually dwell on it and feel awful. However, my dear friends, the actual feedback is not what's causing us to feel the negative emotion, but rather what we're making it mean about ourselves through the thoughts that we have. So what we're doing is that phrase, we're taking it to heart. We take it to heart. They say something to us, we think it, we take it to heart, and then we start truly believing that what they say is true about who we are as a person. So we might start telling ourselves things like, I'm incapable, I'm incompetent, I'm not good enough. Insert whatever insult you want here. So what ends up happening is that all of these thoughts, we take them to heart, and then they become what's called our core sense of self, or our core beliefs, because we actually believe these things to be true about ourselves. So the way that we can determine what our core beliefs are, if you've never considered this, is that you can think about what thoughts you've told yourself over and over and over again. And those thoughts really can lead you to figure out what you believe about yourself at your core. So one thing that I noticed through my study of a book called A Radical Guide to Women with ADHD is that I would look around at the messes in my life. It could be built up laundry. It could be built up papers that I hadn't graded. It could be a messy van after toting my 2 toddlers around. And I would see a mess, and I would make that mean that I am a mess. Like at my core, I'm just a mess. I have all this evidence, all these messes around me. There's no other explanation besides the fact that I, as a person, as a human being, I'm just a mess. Okay? And that's a really sad thought to have, because if you believe that you're a mess, then you really don't think that you can do anything right. So once I realized this, I was like, whoa, yes, I absolutely do that. That's not great. I'd love to get to the bottom of that and work through it. So another thought that many people have, and that I've had as well, is that I'm not good enough. At what? You name it. You can make this mean anything, that you're not a good enough daughter, spouse, mother, teacher, teammate, any one of these things or all of these things all at the same time. And you take any bit of negative feedback that you've seen from the world or that you've given yourself, and you build up this big file of evidence, and you're like, absolutely, see, I'm not enough because of this, and this. So those thoughts and those beliefs are absolutely paralyzing. They work against you. They never help you. They're not productive. And they're mostly not true. So if we pass through our lives believing something that's paralyzing and not true, it's not going to lead us to the results that we really want. So what do we do? The first thing we have to do is figure out what our core beliefs are. What thoughts are we telling ourselves over and over and over again? And then we need to decide, what result do we want instead? What beliefs about ourselves would help us to get the result that we want? And then we ask, what thoughts can we tell ourselves that would lead to those feelings or beliefs that would lead to the results that we want. So if we feel like we're not good enough, or that we have potential but will never live up to it, that would be because of, at our core, we're believing we're not good enough, consistent enough, positive enough, perfect enough. Okay, so believing something different is going to serve you so much more than believing all of these negative thoughts. And it takes time, it takes practice, especially if you've spent your whole life believing these things. But these are what I would call unintentional beliefs. So you have intentional beliefs, right? That you've done research, you've decided these would be things like your beliefs in politics, your beliefs about religion, your beliefs about the best classroom management strategies. You have studied, you've learned, and you've come up with what you believe about these things. Usually our core beliefs, we don't even realize that they have happened, that we have formed them with our own thoughts. So if you can look into it, if you can reflect, if you can practice metacognition, you can think about your thoughts and you can figure out what they are, then you have all the power in the world to start retraining your brain to change those thoughts into something that will lead to a more positive core belief. So when we have beliefs about ourselves based on our past, it is very limiting. Okay? In your past, you were less knowledgeable about the world than you are now. You were less knowledgeable about yourself than you are now and will be in the future. So when you determine who you are based on your past, you will always be stuck in buffering mode. You will not be making progress as a human being or as a teacher. But when you look to who you want to be, when I talked about you choosing and determining your core concept of self, what that means is that you're looking into the future to determine who you are. So who do you want to be in the future as a teacher and as a human? Did you know, how fun is this? Did you know that you can decide now that you are that person? You can start asking yourself now, if I were that person, what thoughts would they have? And then you can allow yourself the freedom to start thinking those thoughts and therefore start becoming that person today. So I'm going to leave you today with my favorite quote of all time. And it's a quote from a therapist named Carl Rogers. And he said this in his book titled On Becoming a Person, A Therapist's View of Psychotherapy. He says, you know what? I have to turn to that page because I lost it. The curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I change. So friends, this week, I encourage you, figure out what you believe about yourself. And if you have not determined that at your core you are worthy, and at your core you deserve acceptance from yourself, that at your core you deserve love, and that you can change the feedback that you give yourself starting now, then go ahead and do it. What are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? This will not lead to a 100% positive life, a 100% yay, happy, why didn't I do this sooner mindset. Okay? You're still going to feel negative emotion. You're still a human. You're still going through this same experience as the rest of us. But you're going to start tipping the scales in your favor, and you're going to start becoming the you that you have always wanted to be. I love you. Thank you for joining me. Come back next week for an episode about the 2 shoulds that are sabotaging you. See you soon. Bye.